Good afternoon, everyone. We are just going to wait a few more seconds for everyone to get on. Okay, welcome everyone, and thanks very much for attending today's webinar. It's great to see so many people on the call. I will be very quick. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Joe Gentili. I'm the Managing Director of Aptus Business Solutions. We're also very pleased to have on the call with us from Sage, Robert Hanson, Steve Duncan, and Justus Siage. Before we go on, a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you have a question while we're going through the webinar, please feel free to type your question in the chat box. We'll be answering as many of those questions at the end of the webinar as we can. And if we can't get to those questions, we will email you with the answers. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, a bit about Aptus. Aptus Business Solutions. We're a Sage business partner and have been for the past 30 years. We are a leading provider of business management software and professional services. We rank in the top 5 Sage partners in Asia Pacific. We have over 300 customers in Australia and worldwide. We also belong to a joint venture of Sage partners across the world. We developed this to help support multi-country implementations of the Sage products, which we seem to be doing more and more of. Our services have been and still being provided to some of Australia's most well-known companies. We work with many not-for-profits in education, faith, healthcare, human services, and some philanthropic. We know that as business changes, whether it be something like the pandemic we're in now or other external factors, it changes how your organisation runs. You need systems to be able to be flexible enough to change with you. At Aptus, we want to forge a partnership with our clients, which goes beyond installing and maintaining systems. We're in it with you. Now, after that quick introduction, I'd like to pass you over to Stephen Duncan, and he's going to go through the new digitisation roadmap for not-for-profit finance teams. Okay, thanks, Stephen.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar entitled The New Digitisation Roadmap for Not-for-Profit Finance Teams. My name is Stephen Duncan, and I am the Product Marketing Manager for Sage Intacct here in Australia. Joining me today is Justus Siage. Justus is our product specialist here in Australia for Sage Intacct, and he'll be taking us through how technology can deliver a solid foundation to support your not-for-profit digitisation roadmap. So for today's agenda, we'll just do a quick overview of Sage and Sage Intacct as a company, an award-winning financial management platform that was launched in Australia last year. We'll highlight some of the results from the recent 2020 not-for-profit financial trends report to get a sense of the challenges organizations like yourself are experiencing. I'll then pass it over to Justus, who will take us through how technology is providing a roadmap to overcoming some of these and other common challenges for not-for-profit organizations. And finally, some case studies and next steps as well. For those of you that might not be aware, Sage Solutions are trusted by millions of customers across 23 countries, including Europe, Africa, Australia, Asia, and Latin America, to name a few. And we are required on to deliver best of cloud technology platforms to support our customers. A 40-year-old organization, Sage Business Cloud, was recently released. It provides everything a modern business needs to manage their financials, operations, people, payroll, and payments as well. And Sage offers solutions for businesses of any size, complexity, and industry as well. It's a good segue because 3 years ago, Sage acquired Intacct, a 20-year-old born in the cloud financial platform. A platform designed for the office of the CFO to deliver better business outcomes so they can deliver on their missions. With over 13,000 organizations worldwide, you can see that 32% of those specifically in the not-for-profit space. That's primarily because Sage Intacct provide functionality or support functionality around revenue recognition to streamline that complex and manual intensive process, grant tracking to automate the billing and grant funding, saving, obviously valuable time and money. And spend management is another example where organizations can avoid unexpected cash flow issues by governing their spend against budget. As a born-in-the-cloud solution, Sage Intacct provides open APIs that are pre-integrated into best-of-breed applications. So things like, Salesforce as an example. Finally, bringing together the operational aspects along with the financial aspects through multidimensional accounting. We round this out with powerful reporting that the CFO and their team can trust, and focus more on their mission by providing the financial data that creates the highest level of stewardship to report back to their members and donors. All right, into the survey. So the 2020 survey is now out for the not-for-profit technology trends, and it reveals what's happening in the space around funding, demand for services, engagement, frustrations, and priorities as well. So with the new report, we polled over 350 not-for-profit finance leaders, and this was across a number of different micro verticals, including human services, education, faith-based organizations, healthcare, and community improvement as well. And interestingly enough, with 60% of the survey respondents recognize the growing demand for service, it's no surprise that the number one external frustration reported by not-for-profit organizations is the increased competition in funding. And this challenge really requires more money to offer more services, and that's the dichotomy they face. So if we break this down in a couple of different areas, we'll see that leaders reported that the biggest increase in funding came from individual donors, while the biggest decrease came from government funding. So that core government funding has decreased, putting a lot of pressure on their services. Overall, they've had to expand their services, but 60% of them have indicated that the cost of their programs have also increased, putting increased pressure on their people and resource as well. And the results of the survey suggest that one reason for the program's expansion and demand for services is that there's an increased demand overall in the community. And certainly if we look at what's happened in the 2020 recent pandemic, there's more call for services. So as we can see, these external challenges that are reported here are fairly predictable and what you'd expect, starting with the funding and demand for services and increased competition. There were economic shifts creating more demand. And obviously, as I mentioned before, things like the recent pandemic have meant that more people now are reaching out for more services and they've had to increase their level of service output. Government regulations have also reported as putting a lot of pressure on the organization, whether it be IFRS 15 or AASB as it's known here. And obviously this has meant that revenue recognition is a key part of the organization's reporting needs. And in a modern day digital economy is impacting the way that charities and organizations are collecting their donations. And so that again is increasing the requirement, the level of services to support that infrastructure as well. And if you notice number 5, something you would expect to see as an internal challenge, but showing here because board members, funders, and prospective donors are requiring high levels of information or data and performance information as well. So a key requirement around there. So let's look at some of the internal challenges. Lack of process automation, organizational efficiency, that stands out as one of the key ones. So infrastructure is really important to manage the everyday business. Manual and time-consuming reporting. Oftentimes, organizations are having to use manual tools or put things out to Excel, spending a lot of time on reporting. Inefficiencies and delays due to multiple and disparate systems. Really getting information from one system to the other requires a lot of overhead, and lack of real-time visibility and key reporting matrix and performance. So again, bringing those KPIs along together with the reporting as well. Obviously, then it means about being able to measure or the inability to measure the outcome matrix. All these are going to affect the productivity of the organization in general and the finance team specifically. Reporting challenges, lack of integration, lack of automation, poor visibility, all have impact and greatly impact the finance team. So what about if we were able to move the needle and solve some of these? What sort of impact would that have on your organization? So one of the things that we're hearing from CFOs is they're spending 75% of their time just managing manual tasks. And they really strive to make that closer to 50-50. So better visibility on cash flow, being able to forecast, predict trends, all will provide the CFO and their team and the wider stakeholders, with the information they need to make more strategic decisions, streamline their processes, and be able to make strategic decisions for the future of the organization. It really starts with unearthing the core challenges. These challenges ultimately point back to one critical element of the business, and that is information. How do we capture, manage, and report on data is one of the most critical keys to building that roadmap for success of digitization. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to Justus, who will take you through some of these challenges and show you a roadmap that you can utilize to overcome some of these through technology. So over to you, Justus.
Thanks for that introduction, Stephen. Hi, everyone. My name is Justus Siage. I'm the Sage Intacct Product Specialist based in Sydney, Australia. These information-related challenges that Stephen has started talking about really reflect on data technology within an organization. With modern true cloud technology, along with best-in-class solutions, you can have automated workflows and reporting integrations between all of your different business applications, ensuring you have visibility and insight into all of your key metrics. You'd all be familiar with social media tools like Twitter that use hashtags as a way for users to quickly find and identify specific data. Now, when you apply that same logic to your financial system, you end up with an incredibly powerful reporting tool, commonly referred to as dimensions. So what is a dimension? If you think about the chart of accounts, every system allows you to account for time and scenario, but there are other attributes that matter to your organization, such as customer or donor, vendor, location, department, and so forth. These attributes are dimensions of the business that matter when you do your analysis. And a financial system should really be intelligent enough to know how to categorize all of your data in a way that's easy to find, which includes using dimensional structures tailored to your organization's requirements, such as in the example that I'm showing on this particular slide. So with that small introduction to dimensions, let's move to the next level that allows you to leverage digital transformation. Your general ledger is your single source of truth. And how do you go about dimensionalizing that to enhance the data that you're able to capture and report on to benefit the organization? Enhancing your general ledger with non-financial data is really about being able to add statistical data to your GL so that you have the key metrics that drive your particular organization. This is often external data that might be, orders or bookings or even donations captured through your customer relationship management system. It could even be headcount data from your human resource management system. How do you have your financial data? So you have your financial data that is enhanced with your industry-specific data in real time for insights into measures that matter. So here's an example of some of those beyond financial metric. On the screen, I have a non-profit CFO dashboard that tracks those critical metrics around program efficiency, fundraising efficiency, as well as trends from prior periods. And this type of reporting gives you a real-time view into not only financial and budget metrics, but those non-financial metrics too, that often include statistical data. You're therefore able to get a more complete view of what matters. A couple of the highest priority challenges relates to disparate systems that lack integration of data. With Sage Intacct, when you do reporting and analysis, all your data is in one place, not just your financial, but also your sales data or donation data, your planning data, your payroll data, and any other information that you'd need in your analysis. With an open API, you're able to easily integrate all of your business applications and data, solving the most fundamental issue that prevents digital transformation. Now, we hear that a lack of visibility and automation of outcomes and performance metrics was critical. And this particular dashboard is an example that shows you how both, automated and integrated data is able to give you real-time visibility into what matters for your organization. This particular dashboard reflects both graphical and report formats, in addition to scorecards across the top. Now, these just highlight your dashboard and have point-and-click functionality that allows you to create the metric that you require, such as revenue divided by number of clinicians. Statistical objects married to your financial data help you to produce the metrics that you want to see in real time. So this would mean no more manual reporting. Sage Intacct gives you automated reporting and instant drill down to the underlying entries. With point and click, you're able to filter your dashboards, change your data parameters. You're also able to do things like look at your budgets versus actual, or even look across different fiscal periods. Furthermore, Sage Intacct allows you to run dual reporting. So you can run both a cash and accrual book and be able to report against both books simultaneously in the system. All of this reporting can be done in real time. We'll now go into a demonstration of these features in more detail so you can see them in action within Sage Intacct. And what we'll start off today is with a few dashboards and show you some of the dashboard capabilities that we've already discussed earlier. So as you can see, today we'll be logged in as Color Grace. Color Grace is the user whose profile we'll be using today. There's a number of dashboards in the system, all presenting different information, and it's a combination of both statistical data alongside your financial metric. On this particular fundraising efficiency dashboard that we have on the screen, we're able to track things like our number of giving donors, our number of major donors, and also look at the dollar value of the contributions received. So this is a combination of both statistical metric and financial data, and we can then do further analysis and compute this. So we can do calculations to find out what our average gift per donor is, or what our cost per donated dollar is. As we start to track this financial data against statistical data, we can start to really derive insights from our organization and start to make informed decisions about where we should focus our efforts. I'm able to look at my campaign contribution to the revenue and also look at the trends in revenue over a given period of time. I'm also able to define dashboards that are role specific for different types of users within the organization. In this particular example, I'm looking at my financial controller's dashboard. On this financial controller's dashboard, I have a mix of both financial statements and different graphs presenting different information. On the left-hand side, I have my expenses broken down by different categories of spend. And similarly, I have my revenue broken down by the different revenue streams in the organization. When we look at the statement of revenue and expenditure, you'll notice I'm able to drill down to underlying metrics. So if I wanted to query the amount spent on conference fees, simply click into that. My dashboard remains open, and instead, the underlying report is opened up to me to be able to drill down further. So I can now see the 2 years comparative. If I wanted to query the dollar value spent in a particular year, simply click into the dollar amount. And this brings up my general ledger report. From this general ledger report, I'm able to see all of my different transactions. If I wanted to query a particular transaction, this particular one being an accounts payable invoice, I'm able to click into the dollar value. This drills me down to the underlying journal entry, from where I'm able to drill down further to the actual purchase invoice. Once I'm on my purchase invoice, I'm able to see the invoice line details. As discussed earlier, I'm able to see the different dimensions that have been tagged against this particular transaction at the line level. So I can see the location that it's been assigned to, as well as the project or grant that it's been assigned to. Sage Intacct provides a collaboration tool within the system that enables users to have conversations at the transaction record level, providing for a single source of truth. This removes the need for your finance team to have discussions externally via email, which denies certain people in your organization visibility into those conversations that are being had. In this particular example, Carla Grace has picked up that Penny has allocated this particular transaction to the wrong project and has sent Penny a message notifying her of the mistake. And a further message has been sent to Penny to confirm when this change will be made. So you're able to have conversations at the transaction level and therefore having a single source of truth for all conversations that are being had and entries being made in your finance system. To simply go back to our dashboard, we'll close the drill down windows, and that takes us straight back to the dashboard where we were before. If we look at a different user's dashboard, in this particular screen, I have my CFO's dashboard. On the CFO's dashboard, given the role of the CFO, the mix of information presented to this user is different to that we saw on the other dashboard. So I'm able to look at things like my fundraising efficiency and also my administrative expenses as a percentage. I'm able to look at my revenue broken down by different revenue sources and also look at trends in cash flow. As you're viewing these dashboards as a user, you can easily click on the setup button and control which users in your organization either have or do not have access to view these dashboards. Now, on this particular dashboard, you'll also notice I have my expenditure report here where I'm looking at my budgets versus actual, but I'm also keeping track of my committed spend, which then gives me a true look and feel as to what my committed spend is. The financial reports within Intacct also incorporate conditional highlighting to help you really draw a user's attention to key metrics that matter. Now, coming back to my controller's dashboard, I'm able to easily navigate to this particular report in more detail by clicking on the magnifying glass. This opens up the report in a new tab for me. Okay, so I can now have the report open in a separate tab, leaving my dashboard open in the previous tab that we're just looking at. As a user with sufficient access, you can also easily customize these reports. Intacct provides you a series of reports and dashboards out of the box, but you have the capability of building additional reports or even customizing the existing reports to meet your requirements as a user. In order to edit this particular report, you simply click on the pencil, and that takes you into our report writer. Now, to quickly learn a little bit about the report writer, we'll come back to the report itself. On the report, you'll notice our grant revenue is shown as a single line, and I'm able to click on the expand button to then show me the breakdown. And you can see that our grant revenue actually comes from two separate sources, federal grants and local government grants. The reason this shows in a collapsed manner as such is a simple configuration that as a user, you're able to define on your financial report writer. So if you come in and look at the configuration for the rows, you'll notice that grant revenue is configured to show in a summarized form. You can easily change this by clicking on the pencil and simply flipping from seeing a summarized view to a detailed view. Coming back to the report again, on the report, you'll notice that I'm looking at the prior year versus the current year. My current year is shown as a single column for actuals. If I wanted to see a quarterly breakdown for this year, I can easily configure this on my report writer. And to do that, we simply click into the column section. From our column section, we can go into the column for current year and simply tell Intacct to expand this column for us. So we'll go ahead and expand this column by time period, and we'll expand it by quarters. As you make any changes to these reports, we provide you the ability to preview those changes that you've made and decide if they're sufficient before proceeding to save the report. You'll now notice that the current year that I'm looking at on this particular report is now broken down and shown to me in 4 separate columns for each quarter, as opposed to 1 column, as you saw in the first report. We will now proceed to actually build a report from scratch. You've already seen a financial statement, and what we'll now do is build a more operational style report from scratch. To do so, we simply go into our report writer, give the report a name, and instead of looking at a financial statement, we're going to build a dimension report as a more operational style report. We can then go ahead and select the rows we want to add. When we set up our departments within Intacct or dimensional data, we're able to group these into various categories. In my case, I've grouped my departments into these different categories that you can see on the screen. For the purpose of this particular report, I'm going to include my operation departments. I'm going to include my direct support department, awareness department, and lastly, community building. Once I've added my departments, I'm able to move them around. Maybe I want to see operations right down at the bottom and awareness right up at the very top. It's a simple drag and drop to rearrange the order in which your various departments will be shown on the report. Once we've done that, we can then go ahead and define what we want to see on our column. So on our columns, we want to see our expenses, GL accounts. And we're going to look at the full financial year. Just like before, we're able to preview these reports as we build them so that we can make sure by the time we're done building the report, it's actually presenting us with the information that we'd like to see as a user. So what we now have is, my different departments shown to me on the left-hand side, and I can then see the expenditure presented to me as a single column for the year. Now coming back to my report writer, I'm able to expand this column. If I wanted to not just see a single column for the whole year, I'm able to expand it by time period again and show a monthly breakdown. Notice I only have a single report, a single column that I've configured on this report. When you go ahead to preview it, because I've told Intacct to expand it on a monthly basis, I'm able to now see that monthly breakdown. And this goes to demonstrate the ease of building not just financial statements, but also operational reports all out of the one system and not having to pull data out of different systems to build operational reports. So that is a quick overview of the dashboards. You've seen we're able to compute different sorts of information on our dashboard, both financial metric alongside our statistical data, and be able to do a further step of computing the two to look at things like average gift per donor. You've also seen the ability to present different information on these dashboards with visual indicators, conditional highlighting, and lastly, drill down capability to the underlying transactions from where you're able to collaborate as a team and therefore have Intacct as your single source of truth as an organization. Okay. Now, just coming back to our dashboard, we'll highlight a few more things. On my CFO dashboard, you'll notice across the bottom here, I'm able to track my budgeted spend versus actual spend and committed spend. This means that I'm able to get a true feel of what my remaining budgets are. And this means once I submit transactions, I'm actually able to put in controls in place to stop users from going over budget. And to look at what this actually looks like, we'll go ahead and look at a purchase transaction. So I now have a purchase order number 43, sitting here. On this particular purchase order that I'm raising, I've told Intacct that I want to spend $5,000 on this particular project from this particular department's fund. I'm then able to go ahead and view my spend insight. On this spend insight, I'm able to see very clearly what the budgeted amount was, how much has actually been spent, and how much has already been committed for spend. I'll then be able to see what this particular purchase is and the funds available, which now gives me a true control of the funds available, how they're spent, and I can also prevent users from going over budget. This provides the ability as an organization to really be at the forefront of your budget control. Instead of only realizing that you've gone over budget at month end, after the fact, you're able to take a proactive approach using this spend insight to prevent users from ever going over budget. Now, just returning to our theme of reporting, in order for you to be able to get a true look and feel of your spend across different departments, for example, okay, or revenue from different sources, Intacct enables you to automatically allocate spend across different departments or various dimensions as you may require. And I'll quickly show an example of this. So I have an example here where I'm allocating my rent expenses to different departments based on their headcount. And this is a good example of leveraging both my financial metric, my rent expense, and being able to distribute it to different departments based on the headcounts within those departments. So we can go ahead and look at one of my allocations. We'll look at the most recently posted allocation here. And you'll notice I've taken my $10,000 rent expense that was previously allocated to my shared department, and Intacct has gone ahead and automatically distributed it across my other departments in the organization based on the headcount within those departments. I can easily go ahead and view the allocation and how it's been run. So I can see when the allocation was run, who initiated that allocation, and I can also see what the source pool was. My source pool was my rent and occupancy GL account for the current month. And the basis of the allocation was based on statistical data in the form of employee headcount, which would have come from my human resource management system, also for that current month. I can then see what that split was. So I can see for each department, their contribution to the number of employees in the organization. And it's this percentage that has now informed the distribution of my rent expenses. Therefore, when I'm looking at my dashboards and looking at dashboards and graphs that I built to show me things like expenses by category or revenue from different sources, I'm able to get a true look and feel thanks to the dynamic allocation tool that comes as part of Sage Intacct. So just to recap, what we've talked about today is some of the power in the Sage Intacct reporting engine. You've seen the ability for us to define dashboards for specific users and be able to combine both financial and non-financial metric on those dashboards. We've also seen the ability to drill down to underlying transactions and also be able to put in place spend management controls that prevent users from going over budget. Lastly, we've talked about the dynamic allocation of expenses across different departments as an example, based on non-financial metrics such as employee headcount. So that really wraps up our demonstration today of some of the key features within Sage Intacct. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Justus, for those insights. It's encouraging to see that with the right data comes that visibility and transparency that organizations need to make informed decisions, especially in these challenging and unpredictable times. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, Sage Intacct works with thousands of organizations. And although Sage Intacct is a for-profit technology company, for us, we prioritize understanding how our customers are leveraging our solutions, particularly in the non-for-profit space where every dollar has an impact. So I'm proud now to share the matrix and impact that some of our NFP customers have had utilizing the solution, particularly those leveraging the technology that we've seen today. So the first one is Room to Read. Many of you may know Room to Read, an international not-for-profit focused on literacy and gender equality and education in developing countries. So Room to Read chose Sage Intacct and scaled easily during a rapid growth period. They actually improved productivity by 25% worldwide, allowing them to benefit an additional 100,000 children. The second example I'd like to share with you is the Community Food Bank of Eastern Oklahoma. Tracking and measuring the metrics that matter for your not-for-profit organization can be automated in real time, as we've seen. When you leverage this type of data and automation, you can easily apply it to your mission. So with Sage Intacct, the Community Food Bank was able to free up half a person's time. That equated to $25,000, which is equivalent to 100,000 meals provided to hungry people in their community. A very powerful story. So this is a small example of some of those 5,000 plus organizations that rely on Sage Intacct every day to deliver on their missions. So from an Australian perspective, we're already working with a number of not-for-profits, including UNICEF Australia and WCIG, a community-based not-for-profit organization committed to improving lives through practical responses to unemployment, delivering training and opportunities for some of our most vulnerable members in the community, such as the disabled and disadvantaged youth. As a market leader, Sage Intacct is positioned as not only the most visionary financial management solution by Gartner, but has received the highest score in the core financials for the lower mid-size enterprise. Although being recognized by Gartner for your ability to deliver technology is great, it's actually what our customers think about us that really matters, and it's the heart of the Sage Intacct business model. And as part of the G2 Crowd's independent satisfaction rating, Sage Intacct has the highest customer satisfaction score, rating 98 out of 100, and a clear leader in their category. So we're very, very proud of that. What our customers say really, really makes a difference and matters. So where to from here? If you're interested in learning more about the subject matter, please request a copy of the Technology Trends Report that I went through today. Just put your request via chat and we'll send you one out directly. You can request a demo if you want to go into more detail about Sage Intacct. We've also put together a Sage Intacct not-for-profit resource site. This includes a 2020 not-for-profit accounting software buyer's checklist. You can download an NFP outcomes matrix ebook or download a Rise of the Data-Driven Finance Leaders ebook. We encourage you to subscribe to our Sage Advice newsletter, where you can pick up blogs, articles, just relevant information about the not-for-profit space, or obviously feel free to give us a call at any time at 1-800-22-2040. And with that, I'd like to conclude today's webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank Justus, but also like to thank our audience for joining in today. We look forward to seeing you at our next event and wish you the best in your digitization journey.
All right, thanks, Steve and Justus. It was a really good session. I'd like to introduce Amy Silver. Amy is Aptus Intacct consultant for NFP. Just to answer a few of the questions that have come through the chat while we're going. There's quite a few here. We're going to only answer a few. There's quite a few on reporting, so we might do some of the dashboards and reporting. Okay, Amy, are you there?
I am here. Hello, everyone.
Great. Okay, first question, Amy. Can you customize the dashboards?
You certainly can. Any report, any user, as long as they have the correct security settings, can customize or build a dashboard from scratch. The customization process is quite simple and is a simple drag and drop. On top of that, Aptus try to make sure all our customers are well informed and up to date. So we host monthly webinars to provide more information on these sort of features in the product. So yes, we certainly can.
Thanks. Question number 2. When building a custom report, are you able to drill down to the transactions?
Yeah, you can. You're able to drill down to the underlying transactions from the report writer. So as you've seen in our report writer, once we configure our report, we go ahead to the preview report on the preview window, where you're able to drill down to the transactions. You're able to click on the dollar values on the report and drill down in a similar fashion that we have done in the reports on our dashboards. So the drill down function is definitely available for you.
Great, great. I think we've got time for one more.
Yeah.
This one here has been asked a couple of times. Can reports be scheduled to automatically distribute from the system?
They absolutely can. We can schedule reports to be automatically sent straight out of Intacct. So you don't need a licensed user to receive the report. You can have users in your organisation who just need to be sent reports on a schedule basis. You're able to quite easily define that within Sage Intacct itself. Not only can you do a single report on a schedule, but you can also set up a group of reports out of the system and run that as one large schedule. So they can definitely be scheduled.
Great. Okay, I think that will be it for questions. There's probably about another 15 questions in there, but we will get back to all of you that have asked questions. I think some of them just need a little bit more detailed discussion.
Sure.
So thanks, Amy. Appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining the webinar today. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Thank you very much.